Hello, love, and welcome back to another episode. Today's episode is all about unconventional things that I do that really do prioritize hormonal balance for me. So, one thing you all have shared time and time again is you like the episodes where I get really personal with you about, my practices, my beliefs, and everything in between. And as we head into this new era, I just want to open up the floor for discussion and really share with you 7 things that I do that are considered, I wouldn't consider them unconventional, but there's a chance that you're probably not doing these things or thinking this way. And for some of you, you're like, bro, like you speaking directly to me. So with that being said, I think I want to first and foremost preface that. Now, one of the first things that I do that's a bit unconventional is I live the lifestyle of somebody who is in the blue zone. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the blue zones, basically it's like people who live to be 100 years old, living in different regions and practicing 9 specific habits. Now, an overarching way to look at this would be they focus on movement, they have the proper outlook on life, they eat wisely, and they're very well connected to, their community, to people they love, and they feel like they belong. I will do an entire episode on blue zones. Actually, I'll record it right after this. I will do an episode on blue zones because I think some of you would find it really interesting. But I would argue that's one of the first unconventional things that I do as an American, to live a life that's very similar to those in the blue zones. It's pretty rare. The second unconventional thing that I do is I utilize other cuisines in my cooking. Okay. I don't think this is unconventional. I think this is really, really common, but I think so many people, especially those of you who are American listening to this podcast, y'all stick with what you know, right? So maybe that's meat and potatoes. Maybe that's burgers and fries. No shade, no tea, meat and potatoes, burgers and fries, bison, buffalo, steak. We got the whole thing. But personally, when I cook, I really lean heavily into Mediterranean cuisine and Asian cuisine. I don't know what it is about those two cuisines specifically, but I feel so amazing. And I do think that one of the reasons I feel so amazing is because, one, there's an emphasis on fresher ingredients and also an emphasis on seafood. Now, I am not super into pork personally. I definitely do eat red meat, but if I had to choose between like a steak and salmon, 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna choose the salmon. So, with that being said, I think that my eating habits being so different than the average American allows my hormones to really stay in a balanced state, but also stay optimized. Now, if you are somebody who's never had Mediterranean cuisine or you've never had Asian cuisine of any kind, let me just kind of give you an overview of like what I think of and how I use them, like, my taste, my vibe, okay? So if I were to like explain Mediterranean cuisine, I would say it's mostly plant food and fairly minimally processed. There's a lot of herbs and a lot of spices that are pretty essential ingredients, okay? And there are a lot of fruits and vegetables, legumes, grains, olive oils, and the aromatic herbs. Oh my gosh, that really does make it a big thing. Another thing about the Mediterranean cuisine that I've noticed is there is dairy and eggs and wine, of course, but that's more so consumed in moderation. And then, there is meat, mostly fish, and only like a little bit of like a red meat or a pork. Okay, so that's how I would talk about Mediterranean cuisine. And if you know anything about food, like just saying like whole foods, right? Herbs, fruits, vegetables, legumes, grains, you know that all of the macronutrients and micronutrients are found in a really plentiful form, especially in the Mediterranean cuisine. Now, if I had to talk about Asian cuisine, one of the first things I would do is break up East Asian from South Asian. So East Asian is definitely what I'm thinking about, is like the Chinese, Japanese, Mongolian, and Taiwanese cuisines. However, South Asian, I would definitely say, is more of our like Indian, Pakistani, Bengali, Nepali, Sri Lankan, like these like very different based cuisines, but still so amazing, right? And then there's also like your Thai, your Vietnamese, your Cambodian. So, there's a lot of different Asian cuisine out there. But for me personally, I used South Asian as well as East Asian. I've noticed that with East Asian cuisine, there's a lot of garlics and ginger, rice, your tofus and different things like that, right? And then with South Asian, there's a lot of curcumin and curries and different things like that. What I love is that you can have it all, literally, and know that it's actually working to your benefit. Because what I've noticed is most of these cuisines have simple bases, and then people build from there based off of what they need. And another thing that's really key is, the way that they steam things or stir fry things as opposed to like deep frying. Like, we deep fry just about everything under the sun here in the States. Whereas all we could do is switch over to stir frying, and I guarantee you, like, a lot of the whole high blood pressure, high cholesterol stuff we're dealing with in the United States would probably, I don't want to say it would go away completely, but it would definitely minimize. So I think that my emphasis on diversifying the way that I cook truly has served me, and it served me really well when it came to balancing and really optimizing my hormones. Okay, like, I could probably sit and talk to you guys about cuisines all day. Fun fact, a guilty pleasure of mine used to be watching No Reservations with Anthony Bourdain, but I can't bring myself to watch it anymore because, God rest his soul. Another show I love to watch is Chef's Table on Netflix. I'm sorry, but like, some of these chefs are amazing, and there's one chef in particular. Actually, there's two. There's one chef that is from, oh gosh, I think it's pronounced Jean Quan. I'm not sure if I said that, but there's another guy I love to watch. His name is Francis Melman, and I could watch both of those episodes time and time again and learn something new. So in case you were like, oh, I like the way she's talking about these cuisines, Jean Quan is more of the Asian style cuisine, and Francis Melman, believe it or not, he's actually Argentinian, but he is a very Mediterranean style of cooking, in my opinion. But I digress. So yeah. That would be the second unconventional thing that I do to kind of maintain hormonal balance and optimization. The third thing that I do is I really do focus on enjoyment and wellness. So this might sound like an absolute no-brainer, but to be fully transparent with you, when I first started cycle syncing, I was so regimented, and it took so much joy out of just sitting down and having a cocktail or eating a meal, because I was almost like just calculating everything out and overanalyzing every aspect of everything under the sun. And it was like, like, it almost made me anxious to have this routine and then break a routine. And I think that I'm just now at a point in my life and in my journey where, for me, if it's costing me my peace, I'm all set. I really am. And I say that from a space of love, but also from a space of like just honesty. Like, you guys, if you are doing something in your everyday life to maintain hormonal balance, but it's also sucking the joy out of you, stop doing it. Because at the end of the day, you are better off being in a joyous state than you are in a miserable state. Like, imagine this, right? I have built up kind of a reputation for being the cycle syncing poster child, right? But it took so much joy out of me when I first started, and then I got really passionate and found my like flow with it, right? And then over the last like year and a half, I've just felt so constricted by it. It took so much joy from me. It took my ability to create and be excited from me because I allowed it to. But the moment I said, you know what? I get to change this. I created an image once of like my brand. I can recreate this and have so much more fluidity and flexibility with it in a way that aligns with me, in a way that I can still talk about people's cycle, but also not feel like so confined to just being the cycle girl, you know? It took so much. It gave a lot. Don't get me wrong, right? I'm so grateful for what talking about this one thing did for me, but it also started to take away so much peace, and that started making me feel really uneasy and unwell, and that eliminated the balance, right? It started getting into these like extremities, which that's not what you want when you are working to balance your hormones and really optimize it. So, I really, really emphasize enjoyment and presence now more than I ever have. And I think I would have to say that it's definitely a bit unconventional, especially in the wellness space, because you don't hear people say it. You hear people say, live well, be well, all of that, live, laugh, love, right? But how often do you truly see that? Okay. The fourth thing that I really do is I immerse myself in experiences. So perhaps you notice that when I talked about the different cuisines, I'm really passionate about it. Like, I just freaking love them. Like, honestly, if you have a grandmother, if you, your grandmother, your mom, any of y'all, aunties want to teach me how to cook, hit me up, because I will immerse myself in your culture, in your family, and like be so happy doing it. But I really do immerse myself in the experiences. So, for instance, I truly love to cook. And so I will, if I'm making a Mediterranean inspired meal, maybe I will put on a movie as I'm like prepping the food, or I'll watch a YouTube channel where they're like prepping something. And it could be completely different than what it is I'm making, but like it's just the energy. It's just the richness of the culture. I immerse myself in experiences. Even when we're like eating dinner, like we'll sit down and be eating dinner, and maybe like I've made a stir fry for dinner. So we're listening to different types of Asian music from like Cambodia or something like that, you know? So again, I really immerse myself in the experience. But not only this, I'm so present as I am eating. So, a lot of you know I've been talking about digestive health, and one of the main reasons I've been emphasizing digestive health is because it's a big part of like balancing your hormones. You only hear people really talk about like gut health, your microbiome, your intestines, and different things like that. But digestive health begins literally, in my opinion, it begins with the eyes. Technically, they say it begins with the mouth, but you eat with your eyes first, and then everything becomes so much more enjoyable. So I immerse myself in the experience of eating. I get a lot of questions about how come everything I cook looks so good. And it's because we do eat with our eyes. And I know for me, like, I am a living being with a living body. And so I want all of my food to be living and uplifting, right? Imagine I had some, like, no shade, no tea, but like haggis. I've only ever seen like pictures of haggis. I've never personally had it, but like when I look at haggis, I'm like, I am all set. And it's because it's like this giant ball of like beef, and it looks kind of dead. Like, as I'm talking about it, I'm just like getting grossed out. And again, no offense to any of my Scots out there, but like y'all know what I'm talking about. Like the presentation of haggis is just not my favorite, right? So like for me, I can't imagine myself eating that. And it's because I'm so immersed in the experience. I'm literally eating with my eyes first. And let me say this, I eat with my nose second. So if I smell it and it's smelling a little funny, no ma'am, no ma'am, no ma'am, don't do that. That's not for me. So I would have to say that is definitely the fourth unconventional thing that I do that really does help me prioritize hormonal balance and optimization. I immerse myself in the experience, okay? The fifth thing that I do that really probably is unconventional, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to have some things to say, but I just graze throughout the day. I know some people need to have 3 square meals a day, and some people recommend that you do intermittent fasting, and then there's other people who say eat 5 times a day. I'm going to be real honest with y'all. I eat what I want, how I want, when I want, and I do not feel bad about it, okay? So what I find is I often graze throughout the day. It's very rare that you will see me without a snack of some sort or like a smoothie or, a little meal. Now, part of the reason I graze so much is because it helps me stabilize my blood sugar levels, but it also helps my digestive system feel really, really good. I have never been the kind of person to eat until they are full. I just haven't been that person. I've always eaten until I've been satisfied. And there's a very big difference between eating until you're satisfied and eating until you're full. I really don't know how people eat as much as they do on Thanksgiving. And if you are a big Thanksgiving person, one, I'm not coming for you. Two, do you boo. But like, I just have never been that person. I've never been the person to have like these heaping amounts of food on their plate or anything like that. Because for me, it's just not satisfying. But what is really, really satisfying for me, right, is grazing. So at Thanksgiving, for instance, I am the person who will eat all of the sides and I'm not watching my portions on purpose. I just eat until I am like, okay, like this should be enough. And then if I need more, I go back for seconds, right? But I'm not in like this rush of all the food's going to be gone and that's just, again, that's just not me. That's not the vibe, not into it, not approved by me. So I would definitely have to say me grazing is very unconventional, but it's also extremely helpful because I am eating for me and what my body needs. And that's how I made my hormonal balance and optimization. And let me clarify, it's not that I won't sit down at the end of the day and have a big meal or that I won't start my day with the big meal. But more often than not, like my big meal is like the average person's like meal, right? So there's some people who can eat for like 3 humans all at once. I probably eat for just one. Like I would argue maybe the way that I eat is that of like a 14-year-old like girl going through puberty where it's like there's enough on her plate for her to like fully develop, but also it's just like she can add more if she wants to, or she can just leave what's on her plate and like be happy with it. That's kind of my eating style. So there is that. The next thing that I do that's really unconventional when it comes to balancing your hormones and optimization is I don't focus on exercising and working out the same way that everybody else does. I do prioritize movement, but I would have to say that we live in a society that makes you feel bad if you don't go to the gym or makes you feel bad if you are like not moving the same way. But for me, I mean, one, I'm a former like high level athlete and a former collegiate athlete, right? So I did about 13 to 14 years of high intensity training, right? In my formative years, like from the time I was, in 3rd grade until I was a sophomore in college. Okay, so I spent a lot of time really exercising when most people were like hanging out and like, having sleepovers. I was literally staying at home and getting ready to go to track practice or go compete. Like, I didn't go to my first party until I was a freshman in college because I grew up in such a sheltered and structured household. So with that being said, I think that my approach to fitness now is very different than the way everybody else is approaching it or telling you to approach it. And guess what? I feel really good and I know I look really good. And you might call that conceited, but listen, baby, if you know you look good, you look good. And that's on period dot. Okay. So I would definitely have to say, I will go for a run, but I'm not running for like this like intense like heart rate, right? I will go for a run just simply to move my body. And if I don't feel like going for a run, I just go for a walk. And if I don't want to go for a walk, I'll sit down and I do some push-ups or some crunches. I'll stretch my body out. I just make it a point to move my body every day. I don't stress myself out thinking about how I'm moving. I simply move my body. So that is definitely the sixth thing that I do that is completely unconventional when it comes to balancing hormones and optimizing them. The seventh and final thing that I do that might be a bit unconventional when it comes to balancing and optimizing hormones is I apply medical medium information my way. So let me emphasize my way. One of the things that I really appreciate is as an integrative health practitioner, like as I was going through my certification, I had to learn about Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, bioregulatory medicine. I had to learn so much. But one thing that we didn't talk about but I was always curious about was the medical medium and his information. If you're not familiar with the medical medium, just do a quick Google search and you will find out all about Anthony William. But I really do enjoy his work. It is very, very different. It is very innovative in my opinion. It is definitely alternative. But I think one of the things that I appreciate on my own journey is my ability to have certain Western information, certain Eastern information, and then more spiritual information. And the spiritual information definitely comes from my own intuition, but also from, according to the medical medium, the spirit of compassion. Now, the reason I would argue that this is unconventional is because a lot of people who are certified by, larger organizations at the end of the day, different boards and different things like that, will discredit him and his work because they don't agree with it. His belief is that everything pretty much stems from the Epstein-Barr virus or a variation thereof. And while I do not believe all of that to be true, I can definitely see like the plausibility of that, right? While not everything he says I'm in alignment with, I don't have a major issue with everything that he says. And I would argue that that's pretty unconventional. Medical medium is definitely one of the most unconventional things I do in my hormone balancing journey. Oftentimes what I'll do is I have all of his books, I think with the exception of one, but I'm pretty sure I have all of his books, and I will use his books as reference points when I am researching different things. So for instance, my clients who have fibroids, I have them all drinking celery juice. Celery juice came directly from the medical medium. He was the first person I heard talk about it. I've got his celery juice book. I really do think and believe in the power of celery juice, but I also do believe in the power of certain supplements that maybe he's not recommending, or, certain brands that he doesn't recommend. And that's neither here nor there. It's the truth anyhow, right? So with that being said, I would say that is definitely an unconventional thing that I do that allows me to maintain hormonal balance and optimization. And I think also now is a great time for me to add in Dr. Sebi. Now, there's a chance you've never heard of Dr. Sebi because he's very controversial. I would argue he's more controversial than the medical medium because this gentleman was from Honduras and he said he has cured HIV and AIDS and all of these different things utilizing intracellular nourishment. Now, Dr. Sebi and his approach to holistic health and healing is, in my opinion, so amazing, but it's also heavily based in African biomineral medicine, or as some people call it, African traditional medicine. Now, I had never heard of African traditional medicine, but it's something I'd been really keen to study over the last, I would argue, probably 3 years. I probably started looking into African traditional medicine in 2020 because, we had nothing but time, right? So with that being said, what I've noticed is his approach to hormonal health and balance and really just getting rid of dis-ease in the body all came down to nurturing your cells. And I gotta be fully honest with you. He's really on to something with that, because when I look at metabolic health, it all starts with the cells. When I look at hormonal health, it's all about how different organs in the body can process different things. There's so many things to be said about that, but I would have to say that the inclusion of medical medium information and Dr. Sabi's work into my personal lifestyle, but also even into the work that I do with clients, has definitely just changed the game for hormonal balance. It's definitely unconventional and I know it, but I also really, really love it. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I have all of the answers, but what I can sit here and say confidently is, I'm 29 years old. And at 29 years old, the fact that people ask me if I'm in college or if I'm in high school at times, I'm like, you really doing a lot because I do have gray hair, but be that as it may. But the fact that people assume that I'm much younger than I actually am tells me that the way that I am living is bringing in this element of optimization that I didn't think about, one. But number two, when I look at my lab reports, when I look at the test and different things, for everything to come back and be in an optimal range, it's just ideal. So those are the 7 unconventional things that I do to really maintain hormonal balance and optimization at the end of the day. I know this episode is a little bit longer than what you're used to, but we're talking about my life, my practice, right? We're not just talking about like my tips for you and how to manage, but we got a little personal. So I've enjoyed doing this episode and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. If you are currently looking to work with someone who can help you balance your hormones and optimize them, please feel free to apply for one-on-one hormonal health coaching with me because I would absolutely love to support you, especially with a level of customization that I know you can benefit from. I'd love to support you by adding a little bit of simplicity into your routine. And please don't confuse simplicity and ease for being the same thing. They are not the same. And last but certainly not least, I did want to let you guys know the Flo Collective. For those of you who DM'd me about the Flo Collective, it is open for you to get in. So the Flo Collective is a collection of all of my teachings about hormonal birth control, aligning with your cycle, your 5th vital sign, how to implement different practices as it relates to aligning with your cycle, how to identify where you're at in your cycle, understanding, different protocols and my approaches to things. It also has many trainings about PCOS and like how to reconnect with the body and different things like that. You can definitely get your hands on that today. And I will leave that link down in the show notes. As always, I love you, I mean it, and I hope you have a great day.